Have you ever noticed that some secondary institutions are able to afford so much more for their students than other institutions? Inequality does exist in the United States, and it's not just random. This is inequality between whites and blacks. Most people probably overlook the fact that racial inequality still affects the people of our country, but this video will show just how real racial inequality is and how it reflects racial progress in the United States. Before we can understand why there is so much inequality in funding for American colleges and universities, we need to understand some crucial history.
In 1890, the United States Congress passed the Second Morrill Land Act. Named after Justin Smith Morrill, this act was meant to promote greater educational opportunities for the more than 4 million American blacks that had been freed from slavery by Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. It specifically targeted the states of the former Confederacy because these states showed the greatest amount of resistance to equal opportunities in higher education. Under this law, these states had two options. They could either admit a higher percentage of black students, or they could build separate universities for students of color. In nearly every southern state, legislators elected to construct separate institutions, and thus the HBCU was born. Today, HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities, produce nearly 20% of African American college graduates. There are 11 HBCUs in North Carolina, the most of any state, and over 100 throughout the United States, as noted by these maps. The development of HBCUs and their attempts in giving black students the same opportunities as their white colleagues may seem like an indicator of racial progress. However, when we take a closer look at these institutions, it becomes clear that true equality does not exist.
In 2013, Michigan State University published a report entitled Contemporary HBCUs, Considering Institutional Capacity and State Priority. The report detailed the funding that certain schools in each state receive from the federal government. When we looked at this report, something immediately stood out to us. For each state that was reported, the flagship universities in each state received substantially higher funding than other universities. In the following example, pay close attention to the difference in funding between each flagship and the following non-flagship university. According to the College Board, flagship universities have something in common. They are the best known institutions in the state. They were generally the first to be established, they are frequently the largest and the most selective, and they are often the most research and tested universities. Another more concerning thing that they all have in common is that almost all of them are predominantly white. So let's get this straight. Certain schools in each state are designated as flagships. Because of this designation, they get more money, and none of the flagships are HBCUs.
So what? How does funding actually affect students, and what does it say about the state of race relations in America? How do these numbers actually translate for students at HBCUs? And what does all of this data mean for them? Take a look at Cheyney University. Located in Cheyney, Pennsylvania, Cheyney University is the nation's oldest HBCU. It received $12.8 million from the federal government in 2015. When we take a look at campus, it's clear that this funding isn't enough. Not only are its facilities inadequate, its enrollment is dropping yearly. In 2010, there were 1,586 students enrolled at Cheyney. In 2015, there were just over 700. Cheyney is millions of dollars in debt for repairs and other operating costs, and each year their funding is decreased. Now compare Cheyney to the flagship of Pennsylvania, Penn State. In 2011, Penn State received $347.3 million in federal funding. Its enrollment had increased by nearly 14,000 students in the last decade. And look at Penn State's campus. Clearly, there are some differences here.
It is clear that unequal funding affects the enrollment at certain schools as well as the quality of the school itself. But we still have one more question. How do students feel about these issues? In order to better understand the student perspective, we interviewed some UNC students. We assumed that most students at a PWI might not know very much about this issue. While they couldn't give us exact dollar amounts or quantify the disparity, they felt very strongly that it was a problem. These are their responses.
Question 1. Do you think there's a difference in funding for predominantly white schools versus predominantly black schools?
If I were to take a guess, I would say that there was. I don't really know economically if that's true, but just based on what I know about what's going on in our system, which I think of as a white supremacist system, that there would be. Just based on there's not as many opportunities for black students as the white students.
I would agree with there's a significant difference, especially in North Carolina with the recent election of Margaret Spellings. She's forcing in initiatives that would decrease funding for HBCUs. And I feel like this disparity just reflects the state's goals and attention to minority students and the needs of black students.
Yeah, I think there is a difference in funding.
Question 2. Do you know the disparity between the amount of money the federal government gives PWIs and HBCUs? If not, take a guess.
Personally, I don't know, just because I never thought about these questions or I've never talked about it with my peers or the financial advisors really. But if I were to take a guess, I would say that the predominantly white institutions would receive more funding. I'm not sure if this is correct or not, but I think historically black colleges and universities, most of them are public schools, so I think that can make a difference in the public-private sector in the amount of funding they would get. If I was just going to throw a ballpark figure, I couldn't even tell you, 20,000? That's just a guess.
I don't know an exact number or an exact percentage, I would guess, but I know there's definitely a disparity and a difference. I would feel like PWIs would receive more money from the federal government just based off past practices. I would guess if I had to put a number or a percentage to it, I feel like PWIs would receive maybe 20 to 50% more per year than HBCUs.
I wouldn't have an exact number. I would think overall in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it would not surprise me if the number was bigger, within the millions.
Question 3. What overall effect do you think a large disparity in the funding of HBCUs versus PWIs could have on you or students at other schools?
I think that funding affects all students really. When I think of funding, I think of more opportunities, be it research or just amenities that are available to you. So in the end, money does make a difference, and I think that the more money, especially in a university or a college setting, makes a difference in the student's experience there and what they're able to do in the years that they're in college.
I think the disparities in funding will affect the students at HBCUs in a negative aspect. I feel like it provides them with less opportunities for research, internships, and even just material to grow as a student in their years through college. So it puts the person at a disadvantage when they're given opportunity. Should I go to a PWI? Should I go to a HBCU? A lot of African American students personally take pride in going to HBCUs, but it's almost like they're sacrificing something to celebrate their heritage, and I don't think that should have to be a choice.
It will affect the quality and caliber of the resources you have and just the number of resources. So you may not have access to some of the equipment, some of the technology, as far as humanities, as far as some of the books that are rare collections. Those kinds of things are very pivotal in being exposed to different subjects and being able to go in depthly with them. For the sciences alone, having the right equipment and quality equipment can affect the experiments and what you're able to actually incorporate in the lecture. So the lack of resources can hinder just how much you're able to learn in the classroom.
difference in the amount of money PWIs and HBCUs are given by the federal government has an overbearing effect on not only the students at the HBCUs who are limited by the lesser amount of opportunity, but also on the racial progress of the United States. The fact that the nation has gone through years of working to create true equality, and yet still a major inequality exists between white institutions and black institutions. Students who attend colleges and universities that receive better funding have a better college experience. It is full of more opportunities for success, better classrooms, better professors, and a better college experience as a whole. While students may not be aware of just how much more money PWIs are given to HBCUs, they are aware of the impact that this has on students at HBCUs. This inequality hinders the potential success of students at HBCUs, and it's a shame that a student who wants to attend a historically black university won't be awarded the same opportunities as they would at a PWI.